Thank you so much for this wonderful invitation to speak to all of my friends there in the pension fund management world. And I am so delighted to have this opportunity. And as many of you know, I witnessed as a cabinet level science advisor in Washington for many years what I saw as the battle between the old incumbent fossil industries and all of the subsidies they had, and how hard it was to see the wind and energy efficiency, the solar energy companies get in the game. And so in 1981, I wrote a book called The Politics of the Solar Age. And we are still in this back and forth politics between the incumbent fossilized industries of the 19th and 20th century and all of the cleaner, greener, knowledge, richer industries that are now coming forward in the 21st century. And so that book of mine, which came out in 1981, was well reviewed in the New York Times and the financial science journals. But Reagan had just come in the White House and he took the solar panels off the roof that President Carter had put on there. So I decided it was time for me to go on my global travels and go around and take invitations in every country where they had translated my book. And so I went all over Europe and Latin America and in Asia. And I even was invited to China in 1986 by the State Council, none less, to do a book tour as a futurist. And so it was very interesting. And so now fast forward 30 years later, I have to say that my basic image and message is still the same. And we've summarized it in our Green Transition Scoreboard reports that we've been putting out every year since 2009, tracking the private investments in global green sectors worldwide. And we started in 2009, and our cumulative amount now is 10.3 trillion, which is in our latest Green Transition Scoreboard, which we have titled Transitioning to Science-Based Investing. And what we realized was that the globalization and financialization on these very old, narrow price-based metrics is still driving us over the cliff. And we have to expand to include really scientific data. Of course, it makes the math harder. And so we call the old financial thinking what it really is. It's magical thinking. And we have to go to the real world now and look at the real world risks and opportunities. And so now I want to take a look at current issues and the critiques going on about ESG and impact investing. And as you all know, Morningstar just stripped ESG labeling off 1,200 ESG branded funds. Now that should be a wake-up call to us all. Bloomberg examined the buyout by MSCI from Morgan Stanley. They bought out all of the ESG pioneers, Innovest, Domini Social 400, KLD, all the really good ones. And basically, Bloomberg found now in an article they did called ESG Myth, that basically MCSI had simply become a very profitable branding platform for ESG and sustainability themed funds. And they noticed that the ESG portfolios are really similar to Standard & Poor's, but a little lighter on fossil fuels. And that the only differences, this is awful, are just the higher fees. So we have a real job to reform ESG and impact investing. And as one personally, who since 1982, I helped the Calvert Group devise negative screens. All this is really very personally painful to me. The early efforts that we did to engage mainstream finance were necessary, but in no way sufficient. And the shift now that I have taken is to pure play green transition funds, of which there are many successful ones now. And I have many personal investments now doing rather well, and others that I'm still patiently waiting for the markets to notice. So there's a strange kind of good news in the COVID 2 years we've experienced, and then getting the latest IPCC climate report, because it forces us to see that there is integrated evidence now from the local and global climate catastrophes that we are all experiencing, that bring together the need to get off our addiction to fossil fuels, which the IPCC says we have to do in now the next 9 years, and to deal with the horrible, horrible situation going on in Ukraine. And basically, the challenge is to ditch our fossil fuel addiction. And we can actually transition very much more rapidly now to greener solar, wind, energy efficiency, because they're now scaled up to the point where, as you know, many of them are cheaper than coal and oil. And so we humans now must cooperate if we are going to survive. And so the good news is that green transition investing has now become mainstream. And along with the focus on inequality and fairness, and how the new public demands for fairness and diversity are forcing us to transform the old financial models. And we now see that getting off fossil fuels and accelerating the transition to the green, cleaner, knowledge-richer solar age are a matter actually of global security and survival of democracy all over the world. And I have summarized all of this in an article which you're going to be able to access. And in this article, I was really asking, can the USA and China find paths to common prosperity? Because in the same way, both China and the US are trying to deal with the same problem, and that is out of control financial markets, still on short-term greed, as it were, and greedy billionaires, and how to control them on our side and the ones in China. And can we come up with a model from our very different cultural perspectives to find paths to global common prosperity? That's the kind of terminology they're using right now. Of course, the bad news is the big shift to private equity. and all of the alternative private funds now buying up non-bank lending, insurance, infrastructure, real estate, and many healthcare facilities, and driving them for short-term profit. It's very sad. Now, pension fund managers and endowments are still piling into these equity funds, these private equity funds, and they're hoping to cash in on higher fees and returns. Now, in negative interest rate environments, as we've had, we understand this search for yield. But in the special report on private markets that The Economist put out in mid-March of this year, they look at all of the new risks in these private markets, and they are seeing a much less lucrative future for the private sector markets. So these are the issues that I know you're all looking at, as I am, very closely. And so to wrap up, my dear friends, we all face the usual conflicts of interest and the clash of basic value systems. And unfairly for the younger people among us, the future is going to be in your generation's hands. And so all we can hope is you'll support our current efforts. And basically we have a initiative out there called Stop Putin, Save Gas, Drive EVs, bikes, exercise, and walk more. And let's finally kick this addiction to fossil fuels. So again, I wish you all well. I'm hoping to align with all of you more closely, and I want to thank you. I'm so grateful for this wonderful opportunity to address you today. Thank you.